Something very interesting that can take place for certain people, and it did for me, is that during a phase of the awakening journey, and I would call it the deconstruction phase, where we're returning back to more primordial source, that these different kinds of changes can can manifest. And for me, one of them, and something a few people have brought up to me lately, are changes in the visual field. And perhaps this is interesting to you in terms of curiosity, or maybe this is something that has taken place or resonates in some way, where the way that we're perceiving the world actually literally starts to change. And that is because there is this giant amount of projection that we're doing onto reality all the time. And we're projecting meaning onto it. We're projecting how we see the world, and it's being replicated over and over again. And during a very profound and deep deconstruction, during the awakening process, the meaning starts to disappear and be reabsorbed back into source, what created that meaning. And so the visual field itself can start to change. And for me, it was pretty dramatic. There was this sort of, for me, it turned into sort of like a 2D kind of visual field for a while, sort of a flatness, and even color. Color kind of disappeared and became more shades of gray and not black and white, but just more transparent, more translucent, more. I call it kind of like ghostly. And I was kind of interested and fascinated at the time. I loved just staring at things at during that period, and just staring at people and at cars and all this stuff and lamps, very simple stuff, because I was kind of fascinated in a way, because it was no longer the way that I had normally seen stuff. And fortunately, it wasn't that scary. And I don't know why, it felt quite safe. And it wasn't only the visual field that was changing. It was also language. Language, the meaning that had been placed into words started to return back to the source of it as well. And so I found myself not being able to communicate in quite the same way. Luckily, it didn't make my life fall apart, you know. Became more simple. Like I became more simple and pared down as as source was reabsorbing what had been projected outward to be true. All the things that I had taken to be true, or much of what I'd taken to be true. And with the visual field, it lasted, I don't know, some weeks or so. And over time, things started to just normalize again. But, during these kind of big transformational times or deconstruction times, it's like we're not left on the same shore after such events take place. It's like, for instance, when one is very little and we're just learning language, and we're in this kind of innocent, kind of open minded, open eyed kind of state. And we're taking in the natural world around us and objects around us. And then we're taught about what those objects are in language. And they turn into an object in terms of how we perceive it. It's no longer just sort of this mysterious thing. Suddenly, it's a tree, for instance. Someone says, that's a tree. And over time, that solidifies into it being something outside of ourselves, into an object. And it's no longer so mysterious and fascinating. It's become a thing, which is what an object is. It's a thing. It's no longer the suchness and the isness of what it is. It's a thing. And that happens in every area, including to ourselves primarily. Primarily, we become an object to ourselves, and we're seen as something separate, a thing to ourselves, versus this natural phenomena that we're just participating as what this is, in what this is, what we are in what this is. So during a deep awakening, what can often transpire at some point is that meaning, what has created this sense of separation, it, it gets reabsorbed and returns back to that which created it, which leaned forward and birthed all this idea of a separate self out into the world. I remember one day, one evening, so I was sleeping and I woke up from a dream, and in the dream there was a sentence, and in the dream I woke up within the dream in the middle of a word, and I looked to my left, there was the beginning of the word, and I looked to my right, and there was the ending of the word, and I was in the center. I was in the center, basically liberating myself from believing in being held hostage. I mean, held hostage by the belief of what that word meant. I was freed of that, of whatever the word was, to be able to be more intrinsically just simply what we are, what I am, versus language being defining me, language defining our world, language defining the things I'm looking at, creating a subject object kind of duality, right? Language is powerful. It's wonderful. We can use it so creatively. At the same time, it does end up defining our world and defining ourselves, even with me, mine, I, one's name. I am this, I am that, I'm a woman, I'm this age, I'm, white, I'm from this country. It's like all these definitions become part of our identity. And all these things kind of feed into it, language, um, what the way we perceive and see life. So these are the veils over reality that are being placed over reality, over the simplicity of just being here and seeing things unveiled more directly, more nakedly, I guess. And I mean, in a way, it's never going to be fully experienced as it is, probably really what it is, probably just waves and particles and light, and the way that our eyes and the way our senses perceive reality. It's defined and sort of constructed by being a human being. We have our way of perceiving reality, and that's always going to be true, just like a tree and so on. But during the deconstruction phase, sometimes it reverts back to prior to the way that even this is wired. One might even see things vibrate and dance, like um, even static things like a table and a chair, and much less a tree. We might see the vibrational quality of matter itself be the light dancing. We'll be able to see that. And perhaps you've seen this. There've been times that I have looked up into the sky, and it's just not just the sky, you know. It's like one time I saw, and it was just mandalas. It was like a web of mandalas up in the sky. Another time, and I was completely sober, by the way. Another time, I went to this place in Texas called Enchanted Rock. I was young. This is like in my like 20. I was very young, and went to the top of Enchanted Rock with some friends, and we stayed as late as we could before people were ushered out back then. And maybe we even spent the night up there. And completely sober, I was just looking up at the night sky, at the stars, which were there were no lights. It was completely black, and then just stars. And suddenly I saw the stars moving really, really fast, like the planet was I was like part of the planet speeding up, the way it's moving, and we don't normally sense that. But it was like the stars were just flying, shoo, shoo, just like this, like with the planet moving. And no wonder why it was called Enchanted Rock, which was named, it was considered magical by the Native Americans of that region. So a little break, a little opening into a more undefined, magical, you could call mystical, kind of opening of the shutters of our the way we perceive reality, just opening up and letting go of our way of defining things. When there's a relaxation, so much can be felt and seen. You know, yeah. And is it really magical, or is it really just, well, the world is full of mystery. You know, we could say it's magical, but it's just mystery. There's so much we don't know. There's so much we don't understand. And when the separate self sense starts to undo and relax and let go, a lot of disappearance can take place. And that can show up, as I was just saying, in the visual field, within language itself. So much can get deconstructed that will that where that separate self sense has defined the way we view reality, which isn't based in truth. It's a projection of the separate self, of the dual way of perceiving reality. And there's probably so many more aspects, that I could point to. For instance, the downloads that can take place in the brain, in the mind, where it's like these programs get released, including language, where you maybe can't speak so much for a while, or your brain is not functioning in the same way. Some people get a little scared at that point, because it seems like when it's going into brain fog or dementia, it can be scary. But really, oftentimes, things are being emptied out, even memories, in order for us to be able to come back to more innocence. And like I said, sometimes you can feel these downloads of basically just being rewired back to the natural state, to a more organic, natural way of perceiving reality that is not based on separation, on believing in and duality per se. Of course, there's me and you and this and that and all that stuff, right? We can still navigate once we're deconstructed and we're returned back to our true nature. You absolutely can and will navigate. But that journey can take a while. It can take years. Coming back to our true nature is not only hard work and the dark night of the soul, all that stuff, like crises, and it can be really, really enjoyable, and um, and one can have a really interesting, good time if one lets go of the control and relax into the intelligence that is wanting to have you come back to your own birthright and live it, and what that looks like here in the human being, and this magical, beautiful home that we're at. Okay, take good care as always.